Welcome to Happy Aura, a calm space in a loud world. Slow down, breathe deep, and enjoy wisdom. There are nights when the silence feels heavier than stone, and the hours stretch too long to endure. In those hours, the mind becomes a restless animal, pacing through shadows, inventing dangers where none exist. Thoughts circle and circle, growing darker with each turn. We imagine betrayals, failures, endings, catastrophes waiting just beyond tomorrow. And yet, if we look closely, we often find that these terrors are not messages from fate, but echoes of two simple states of being: fatigue and loneliness. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. The phrase is both diagnosis and remedy. It reminds us that fear is not always a prophecy, not always a signal of something real. Sometimes it is only the cry of a tired body or an isolated heart. To understand this truth is to loosen fear's grip, to see it not as an inevitable truth, but as a condition that can be soothed, cared for, healed. Fatigue distorts perception. A tired mind sees cliffs where there are only shadows, hears threats in voices that mean no harm, imagines failure in tasks well within reach. Think of the way a child behaves when deprived of sleep, tears over trivial things, sudden terrors, irrational refusals. Adults are no different, though we disguise our exhaustion in more complicated forms. We catastrophize, we lash out, we lose hope. We build whole stories of doom because our minds, drained of rest, cannot carry the weight of clarity. In fatigue, every problem looms larger. A small debt becomes the ruin of our future. A delayed message from a friend becomes proof of abandonment. A stumble in work becomes a prophecy of collapse. Yet, after sleep, after rest, those same mountains shrink back into molehills. It is no accident that anxiety often intensifies late at night. The body is weary, the mind overextended. The natural resilience that daylight lends us fades with the sun. In this weakness, fears multiply like shadows cast by a single candle. Rest is not luxury. It is medicine. Without it, the imagination turns against itself. If fatigue poisons the mind with distorted vision, loneliness poisons the heart with emptiness. We are not meant to live entirely within ourselves. The human spirit is communal. It thrives on touch, on presence, on shared laughter, on the simple recognition of another's, eyes meeting our own. When loneliness settles in, fears creep closer. In isolation, every small worry echoes endlessly. Without another voice to counter it, a whisper of doubt becomes a roar of certainty. We lose perspective because perspective is born in dialogue. Loneliness breeds the fear of unworthiness. Perhaps no one cares. Perhaps I am unlovable. Perhaps I will always be unseen. These fears are not objective truths. They are illusions magnified by emptiness. The presence of a single trusted friend, a single voice that says, "I see you, I hear you," can shatter their hold. Connection is not just companionship, it is sanity. Fatigue and loneliness rarely arrive alone. They feed each other, weaving a tighter web of fear. Exhaustion makes us withdraw, too weary to reach for others, too drained to speak our truth. Loneliness, in turn, makes rest restless. The bed feels colder, the silence louder, sleep harder to come by. Together, they create a fertile ground for fear. In that soil, worries grow wild, unpruned, unchallenged. And soon, what began as a passing doubt flowers into despair. But if we can name their presence, if we can say to ourselves, "This fear is not reality, it is fatigue. This despair is not truth, it is loneliness," then the cycle begins to loosen. Awareness is the first step toward freedom. Fear often poses as a teacher. It says, "I am showing you the truth. I am preparing you for danger. Without me, you would be destroyed." But not all fears are equal. Some are rooted in real danger, guiding us to act wisely. Others are nothing more than phantoms born of exhaustion and solitude. The wisdom lies in discernment. When fear rises, we must ask, is this a signal of reality or a shadow cast by fatigue and loneliness? Consider the moments when your fears feel most intense. Late at night, after long hours of work, when no friend has spoken to you in days, are those fears trustworthy guides? Or are they false teachers, preaching doom from pulpits of weariness? To see fear's origin is to strip it of authority. It may still shout, but you will not bow to it. If fatigue births fear, then rest is the remedy. Rest is not simply the absence of activity. It is the deliberate act of renewal. It may take the form of sleep, of course, but also of stillness, of silence, of stepping away from the endless hum of obligation. To rest is to remind the body and mind that they are not machines. It is to surrender to the rhythms of nature, which demand both activity and pause. Even the earth itself cycles between growth and dormancy, between bloom and decay. When we rest, the mind clears, perspective returns, problems regain their proportion. Hope, which fatigue buried, rises again. The fears that seemed insurmountable the night before dissolve like frost in sunlight. This is not magic. It is the simple alchemy of rest. If loneliness breeds fear, then connection is its cure. Connection need not be grand. It may be a phone call, a meal shared, a walk with a friend, even a brief conversation with a stranger who meets your eyes with kindness. These small gestures of recognition remind us that we are not alone in the vastness of existence. There is a reason why despair often lessens in the presence of others. Another person, by their very being, interrupts the echo chamber of our minds. They provide alternative voices, perspectives, energies. They pull us back into the shared rhythm of life, where fears cannot monopolize our thoughts. To reach for connection requires courage, especially when loneliness has convinced us of our unworthiness. But in that reaching lies salvation. Many of us treat our fears as enemies to be conquered, monsters to be slain. But what if we treated them instead as signals of unmet needs? If fear arises from fatigue and loneliness, then perhaps it is not an enemy, but a messenger. It says, rest, connect, tend to the garden of your life, for it is growing dry. This perspective transforms fear from something to be battled into something to be listened to, then soothed. By answering its root through sleep, through companionship, through kindness to oneself, we dissolve the illusion it created. The courage, then, is not in ignoring fear, but in listening deeply to what it is truly asking of us. When you feel the weight of fear upon you, practice this. Pause. Recognize the fear without judgment. Ask, where does this come from, reality or fatigue and loneliness? Rest. If your body is weary, give it the gift of sleep, or at least stillness. Reach. If your heart is lonely, reach toward another, even in a small way. Release. Remind yourself that not all fears deserve belief. This is not a cure-all. There will be days when fatigue lingers, when loneliness remains. But even then, this practice can soften fear's grip, remind you that it is not absolute, not destiny. History is full of people who mistook fatigue and loneliness for failure or doom. Writers who nearly abandoned their craft, only to find their courage return after rest. Travelers who despaired in solitude, only to regain hope in the company of strangers. Soldiers who broke under exhaustion, only to rise again after a single night's sleep. These stories remind us that despair is not always the voice of truth. Sometimes it is simply the voice of weariness. Sometimes it is simply the ache of being too long alone. And if that is the case, then hope may be closer than we think. The human spirit is resilient, but it is not invincible. It needs care, renewal, connection. When deprived of these, it invents fears, weaving nightmares out of shadows. To remember that many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness is to take a step toward compassion for ourselves and for others. It is to see fear not as madness, but as a signal. I am tired. I am lonely. I need rest. I need love. And in answering those needs, fear softens. The shadows recede. The night is no longer endless, but a passage toward dawn. So the next time fear rises within you, pause and ask, am I simply weary? Am I simply lonely? If the answer is yes, then know this. You are not broken, not doomed, not lost. You are simply human. And the remedies rest, companionship, kindness are within reach. Take them and let fear dissolve into peace.